Okay, so like I said earlier, we'll be talking about the bull case for Ether, the asset. Okay, so why Ethereum? Why not Bitcoin? Why not some other L1 exchange? Why am I personally so bullish on Ether? And why I think you should be too. So first things first, it's the first smart contract enabled blockchain. Everybody looks at Bitcoin as the first mover in the market. Everybody looks at Bitcoin as the first cryptocurrency. But there's one thing that Bitcoin lacks, which Ethereum excels in, is having a smart contract enabled blockchain. What is a smart contract enabled blockchain? Basically, it allows you to do much more than just transfer the specific asset on that blockchain. Like for example, on Bitcoin, all you can do is transfer Bitcoin from user A to user B. But on Ethereum, you can do much more, and I'm pretty sure you all are familiar with what can be done. Also, it's censorship resistant. In terms of this, what does that mean? When you compare Ethereum with other L1 solutions like BSC, Solana, Harmony, everything else, Ethereum has the most nodes all over the world, and it's the most resistant to any sort of state intervention. I'm not saying it's 100% resistant, but I'm saying it's the most resistant. Nextly, real world use cases. In the 2017 bull market, I think the one thing that happened a lot was speculation. What can this do? What can this do? It was always speculation. It was never, what is this doing? But today, in today's bull market, that's what we see. We see real things happening on the blockchain. Yes, there's still somewhat speculation here and there, but there's actual use cases, actual things happening. And moving on, the biggest thing that is happening in Ethereum right now, actually part of it just went live yesterday, is the change in Ethereum's monetary policy. This is something I'll focus this whole presentation on. So we'll go into much further detail as we move forward. And also layer 2, I think you all had a talk about Polygon Matic a couple of weeks ago by my colleague Dennis. So I will expand more into what layer 2 means, how layer 2 is going to support this change in Ethereum monetary policy, and why layer 2 makes me more bullish on Ether, the asset. Okay, so firstly, there's this huge meme going around. I think everybody who is involved in crypto, we all know that there's a lot of memes. Memes make it exciting, memes make it funny, and sometimes memes just make sense. So you look at this meme that has always been on Bitcoin. You always see this thing called sound money. People always say Bitcoin is sound money. Why? Because it's X-based. Inflation is fixed. Everybody know how much inflation it's going to have. It's not like the dollar where a small percentage of people control how much is printed. This is rules coded into the blockchain that can never change. Hence, sound money. So what Ethereum people came up with in a comparison to this is, since Bitcoin has a capped inflationary supply, at least up to 2140, Ether's response to this is, with the upgrades to our blockchain, we would actually be decreasing supply. So if Bitcoin is sound money, we are ultra sound money. I'll go more into detail about how it can actually become decreasing supply, whether it's really decreasing supply. This we'll talk about on later. It's great that we actually had this talk the day after EIP 1559, because I can actually give examples of what happened yesterday. Okay, so let's move on. So the main three things that I'll be covering in this presentation is, I'll be sharing with you what EIP 1559, I'm pretty sure all of you hear what EIP 1559 is, but no one really understands what is actually happening, or a lot of people aren't really sure what is happening and how is this going to affect Ether. Also, I will go through Ether 2.0, the significant changes, and I'll briefly touch on layer 2 and how this will impact everything else. Okay, so first thing, EIP 1559. So very simply put, how do proof of work miners make money? Okay, there's two types. You get block rewards, you get transaction fees. Similar for any blockchain. You always get block rewards and transaction fees. So block rewards, you get, right now, it's 2 Ether every block. It started off at 5 Ether, it became 3 Ether, now it's 2 Ether. And you roughly get about just over 6,000 blocks a day. So that gives you an inflationary supply of Ether, about 12k Ether a day, 12 to 13k Ether a day, because blocks time isn't fixed. It's relatively similar, but it isn't fixed. So based on that, it's about 12 to 13k Ether a day, and transaction fees. So this is what every user complains about all the time. When you use Ether, when there's an NFT drop, it's 300 GWay, it's 400 GWay, you spend $50 to buy something worth $20. Yes, this money is going to the miners. So this actually makes mining very, very, very lucrative. So what changes with EIP 1559? This is something very interesting and something that I feel is very, very bullish for Ether, is this. So your block rewards stay the same, doesn't change. 2 Ether a block goes to miners, no change. Your transaction fees, this is where it gets changed. So your transaction fees initially was just one step, transaction fee, go to miner. Now there's two types of fees. One is a base fee and one is a tip. Okay, in order to explain the differences here, I'll need to explain to you how gas fees used to work. So initially how gas fees worked is a very simple auction-based model. Okay, so for example, nobody wants to use Ethereum now. There's nothing happening. We're in a bear market. Ethereum's $50. Gas fees are maybe less than 1 GWay, 2 GWay, 5 GWay, because demand for the block space isn't high. So it's a full auction basis. You put in how much GWay you think you're willing to pay. Miners will pick the thing that is the most lucrative and they will mine it. You have estimators which tell you how much it was in the previous blocks, what is the average gas fee. That's where your Etherscan comes in, your gas station comes in, your MetaMask comes in, where they estimate what they think is a relatively fair fee to pay based on how long you're willing to wait for your transaction, or based on what history tells them is a fair fee to pay. So where it splits here is base fee and tip. The very interesting concept here is that, as you can tell in that auction-based model, there's a very guess and check system. So like, for example, I want this to go through. This must go through in this block. No way in hell can it not go through in this block. And GWay now is 20. I will just put 500 because I want it to go through. I don't care. I want it to go through this block. It has to. It's an arbing opportunity. It's a liquidation opportunity. It's something I needed to go through. And these transactions usually all happen at the same time. They usually happen when the market is volatile. And thus you see an insane spike because everyone's just overpaying because they need their transaction to go through. The great part about base fee is that this base fee is determined by the protocol. It's determined by Ethereum itself. How does Ethereum determine this? It determines it based on the last block. So if the last block was like 80% full, they have a benchmark which they look at. It's somewhere around 80%. So if it was 80% filled, the gas fee would remain the same in the next block. If it was more than 80% filled, the gas fee would increase. If it was less than 80% filled, the gas fee would decrease. On top of that, they let you add a tip to miners, just to incentivize the miners in case in that specific block, there's a lot of transactions and the miners get the chance to pick which one to do instead of just doing everything. Then this is where the tip comes in. So this part, in terms of how much you pay for gas, it might not change that much because people, when they need something to go through, they're just going to tip crazily because they need it to go through. I don't care how much I pay. I'm making 100 grand on this transaction. I can pay you $1,000. I can pay you $5,000. I don't really care. So that's where the tip comes in. But there's a lot of guesswork that is removed in the base fee. So for people who just want their transaction to go through at any time, I'm just redeeming yield. I want it to go through today or maybe in like the next hour or something, but I'm not in a huge rush. It doesn't need to be the next block. Then you just pay your base fee with minimal tip, makes it a lot less guesswork. But the key component here that changes, I would say gas fees don't change that much, but the key component that changes here is this base fee is burned. This base fee is taken out of supply. So this is the key component where everyone says we got ultrasound money. Why? Like I said earlier, every block you have 2 ETH that's minted. But if this base fee is above 2 ETH, technically Ether is a deflationary asset because you make 2, you burn more than 2. In fact, yesterday, that's why I say we're lucky we had this talk today, because yesterday during EIP 1559, there was actually couple of blocks when since EIP 1559 has been live, there's actually been a couple of blocks that were deflationary. There was actually an NFT drop yesterday. This is very interesting. It was called COVID Punks, some play on crypto punks. Basically, to mint Ether, it cost people to mint the NFTs, it cost people 300 Ether. But throughout all the minting transactions, 520 ETH were burned. It's insane. So that you actually already see is happening. Obviously, you can't prorate a 1 day, what happens in 1 day for what's going to happen for the lifetime of the protocol. Will not be smart to do that. But this just gives you a hint of what you can expect. It's basically what I've already went through. Same. Okay, so this is how rough deflation estimations are calculated. So for example, here you can see inflation. So I went through earlier 2 ETH per block, about 6,400 blocks a day. You get 13K ETH minted a day. So deflationary. You can actually check out this website, ultrasound.money. You can actually play around with what you think GWA is going to be, and they will give you an estimate of how much ETH is burned based on the GWA. So roughly, I put these figures from there. At 30 GWA, you get 3K ETH burnt a day. So if you are minting 12K ETH a day, and you are burning 3K ETH a day, that's a 25% reduction in sell pressure, which is insane. Because all Ether needs to go up by 25% is to have the exact same buy pressure that it had. So I think that is where this very interesting concept of what EIP 1559 actually does to Ether, the asset. Okay, moving forward, I'll talk about Ethereum 2.0. So basically what changes in Ethereum 2.0. Okay, so Ethereum right now is a proof of work blockchain. Okay, what's a proof of work blockchain? Bitcoin is a proof of work blockchain as well. Basically, proof of work blockchain is where miners have to spend a lot of money to get good computing systems to solve algorithms to be able to mine a block in Ethereum and get rewarded with ETH. Rewards, as I explained earlier, they make transaction fees and they make block rewards. So it's 2 ETH plus whatever transaction fees. But the thing about it in a proof of work system, which is the same thing you see in Bitcoin, you see people always talking about miners taking profit. Always when you see a large crash, then you would see something on Glassdoor, something on all these news outlets saying that, this crash was because miners were taking profit. Yes, people get annoyed, but I mean, honestly, you can't blame them. You're spending so much of money on electricity. You're spending so much of money trying to get the equipment to mine your stuff. You need to sell. You need to cover your operating costs. It's a very simple business concept. You need to, whatever you make, you have to sell a portion of it to cover your operating cost. What changes in proof of stake is that this duty to mine to validate the blockchain is shifted from miners to stakers. For miners, they assume when it's proof of work for miners, the assumption is that because they have spent so much money to be able to mine on the blockchain, it would be stupid of them to compromise the blockchain, because what they are getting paid is the asset. So for example, if a miner gets paid Bitcoin to mine the Bitcoin network, and then this miner just puts a ridiculous transaction that doesn't make sense. Besides other punishments, let's say if he doesn't get caught, but it doesn't make sense to him to put in a transaction that does not tally, because that would cause the asset, the price that the thing that he has earned to significantly drop in value. When people can't trust Bitcoin anymore, we're not going to see 60 grand Bitcoin anymore if that happens. Same thing for Ether. If people can't trust Ether anymore, you're going to see the price of the asset drop, and all his operating costs, he will not get back any money for the amount of money he has spent on his operating costs. In proof of stake, this is shifted to the staker. So in order to stake, you need a large sum of the asset. So for Ether 2.0, you need 32 ETH in order to stake. So what they assume is because you have 32 ETH, a large portion of your net worth is in ETH. You wouldn't want to compromise that blockchain. That's the assumption there. because it doesn't make sense. I mean, obviously you can, there are other ways to get caught. There are ways where other nodes, where there is more sufficient nodes that say that this is invalid and invalid. That's very technical detail, but there are other ways to get caught. But now I'm assuming the person doesn't get caught. It doesn't make sense because your whole net worth is there and you make the blockchain untrustworthy. Whatever ETH you have staked is going to drop in value. Let's say you put in 32 ETH when ETH is $1,000. So you have put in 32 grand. But because of the fact that you lied here and then people realize, hey, I can't trust Ether or blockchain anymore. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. Then Ether's value goes down to $100, $10. So it's on this system that makes sense. Obviously, there's a lot of other ways to check. There's this where as long as 51% of the protocol thinks it's wrong, it's probably wrong. There's a lot of other technical ways to check, but this is in essence what it is. Okay, so as I said, to participate in staking, you need 32 ETH. You can also participate through node operators. In fact, Binance probably, I think, if I'm not wrong, it was at one point of time, I don't know if it still is, the largest Ethereum 2.0 node operator. So you can actually stake ETH on Binance and it unlocks when Ethereum 2.0 releases. So what you get is block rewards as well, similar. But when you participate through node operators, when you participate through like different centralized exchanges or different DeFi protocols, the great thing there is they usually give you something to represent your stake, which can also be used for other things. So, for example, like when you stake Ether in Binance, you get B Ether. So I stake 1 Ether, I get 1 B Ether. I can take this B Ether and sell. I can take this B Ether and lend it on a borrowing platform. I can take this B Ether and farm. I can do a lot of things with this B Ether. So it ensures thorough capital efficiency so that even though you are staked, you still get to participate in DeFi. And so who stakes? Who will go and buy 32 Ether for what today's price of Ether is just under 3 grand, so almost 100 grand? Who would spend 100 grand on Ether? People who are bullish on Ether. And people who are bullish on Ether, tentatively, I mean, yes, everybody needs to take profit at certain points of time, but in general, if you're bullish on an asset, you're going to sell less. You're going to not want to sell. As compared to proof of work miners, when all they need to do is sell, because they have to run it. They are paying. They have money going out every month. They have money going out for electricity. They have money going out for equipment. When the network gets more competitive, they need better equipment. They need money. Their business is a USD denominated business, or a SGD, or a fiat currency denominated business. Whereas in proof of stake, staking is not a fiat currency denominated business. It becomes an Ether denominated business where it doesn't matter what the price, because you're bullish. So the price of it does not matter. You will just want to accumulate more and more and more ETH because you believe ETH is the future. So selling pressure on ETH significantly, it's hypothesized that it would significantly drop. Okay, moving for layer 2. Couple of different types of layer 2s. Firstly, we got Ethereum mainnet, which is your layer 1. And then you have layer 2 rollups, which is stuff like, there are 2 different types of rollups. There's optimistic rollups and ZK rollups. How they differ is very, very, very technical. I don't think there's a need to know, but it's basically, there's the 2 types of rollups you have, both Optimism and Arbitrum that I wrote here. They are both optimistic rollups, and they are both actually launching very, very, very soon. Like Uniswap, the biggest DeFi, one of the biggest DeFi protocols, probably the biggest, is already live on Optimism. SNX has been live on Optimism for a while now, though through limited functionalities. Arbitrum, they are actually in the stage of whitelisting protocols, where protocols are building. They were supposed to be rolled out to users sometime last month, but I mean, as usual, with things like this, there's always a delay. Layer 2 sidechains, you got your Polygon Matic, you also have XDAI, you also have a bunch of other sidechains. Some people would even consider BSC a sidechain. You would consider every other EVM compatible machine a sidechain. So what's the differences? Okay, so the one thing that to note is that to compare between Ethereum layer 2 rollups and layer 2 sidechains, there's 2 very, very important comparisons in my opinion: security and transaction fee. So for example, here, you can see as you move down the slope, it gets less secure, but it also gets cheaper. So it's pretty much you get what you pay for. If you're doing something of very, very, very high significance, you are running $100 million every day, you need it to be on Ethereum mainnet because you cannot afford for this to be compromised. But if you're a regular user dealing with, $100 transactions, you're just speculating on another asset, you can do it on Matic. It's fine. Like you don't need that much security. Where else, if you are somewhere in between, you can do it on Optimism and Arbitrum. Personally, what I foresee in the future is we will have a specific roll-up or sidechain for every different purpose, which is 100% possible. Like we can have an NFT sidechain, or even NFTs can be split up. You can do like a NFT football sidechain, NFT gaming sidechain, NFT basketball sidechain, NFT art sidechain, NFT music sidechain. Then DeFi, you can have a DeFi sidechain that focuses on SGD, a DeFi sidechain that focuses on USD, a DeFi sidechain that focuses on Euro. So that's a lot of different things that can be done. But the great thing here is all transactions happening on layer 2, every single transaction will eventually have to be confirmed on Ethereum mainnet. The way in which it confirms is the difference between rollups, sidechains, different kind of rollups. Like rollups in general synchronize with main chain a lot more often than sidechains do, which is why they are more secure. But another thing great that this adds on is that you can pay whatever gas fees you think you can afford to pay. If you have a net worth of 15, 20 grand, makes sense to just use Matic. Why would I want to pay $100 for a transaction? Why would I pay $50 for a transaction? I can just pay 10 cents. Makes sense. If you have a net worth of, 300-400K, maybe I'll use a roll up. I can pay I don't mind paying $1 to $3. It's fine. But if my net worth is in the 9-10 digits, sure, I can use layer 1. It's fine. So there's something for everybody. The inclusivity of it is what is important here. And eventually, the more economic activity you see, the more Ether is burned. This is all back to EIP 1559. This is why everything eventually links up. The more things you see on layer 2, the more Ether is burned. The more transactions, the more NFT drops you have, the more Ether is burned. Which is why I've gone through this part, which is why this is very important in my opinion. Why EIP 1559 is insanely important. Pre-EIP 1559, economic activity on Ethereum is not necessarily correlated to Ether price. Yes, I need to buy Ether to make a transaction on Ethereum, right? Everybody knows that. But then I just sell the Ether. Or I just use the Ether and the miner sells it. Is it dependent? Maybe slightly. Like if you think when at the start of DeFi summer, you would have bought a lot of Ether because you foresee this being the future, yeah, you would have won a lot. But it's not directly correlated. There is some sort of correlation, but it's not directly correlated. But post EIP 1559 world, economic activity on Ethereum is 100% correlated to Ether price. Perfect example is the NFT drop I talked about yesterday, COVID punks. It only cost people 300 Ether to mint everything. But the same people burn 520 Ether. Imagine that. Imagine if we have NFT drops like that every other day, which is what is happening right now. Like EIP 1559 couldn't have happened at a better timing because right now it's NFT mania. Everybody's just minting new NFTs every day. It's very similar to what DeFi summer was for DeFi, I feel. Like that's what's happening. So it's great. Every single thing that happens on Ethereum leads to increased activity on Ethereum, leads to more Ether getting burned. Direct correlation. So this is the stuff I've gone through earlier, but it's basically me listing what the use cases on Ethereum are right now. So this is where I feel that earlier when I tied in why I pick Ethereum, because there's real life use cases here. So NFTs, I mean, everyone's confused, like what really are NFTs? What are we doing with NFTs? What's going on with NFTs? But what we have seen, despite this level of confusion, there is huge traction. Will this traction go somewhere? Maybe, maybe not. But every day, every new NFT drop that we are having makes it seem more likely that this traction is going to go somewhere. Decentralized finance. Decentralized finance is actually already being used. You look at Visa. Visa actually settles payments in USDC. Coinbase actually offers people lending options on DeFi protocols. Recently, they've tied up with institutional investors to invest on Compound with a fixed 4%. So all of these things are already happening. You compare to 3 years ago, the bull market, all of this was speculation play. There was nothing that was actually happening on the block space, but everyone was thinking this could change the world. And now it's actually going to change the world. Okay, moving forward, why EIP 1559 and Ethereum 2.0 and layer 2 all in general make me very bullish on Ether. So, okay, everyone knows cryptocurrency cycles are defined by Bitcoin's halving, right? So every 4 years, the block reward of Bitcoin halves. Thus, there is less Bitcoin distributed than there were. So, for example, it went from 12 to 6.25, something around those numbers recently. That started this bull cycle. So, all of this starts because there's a shock of supply. Initially, every day there's 12, now there's 6. With EIP 1559, like I've shown you earlier with sample calculations, how if we stick at 30 GWA, we drop by 25%. Even more so if we do have days or weeks or months where something insane is going on Ether, like we have a repeat of DeFi summer, or we have NFT summer looking very similar like DeFi summer, it's not going to be a 25% decrease in supply. It's going to be a 50% decrease in supply. It's going to be a 60% decrease in supply. So all of this, plus when you add on Ethereum 2.0, like I said earlier, Ethereum 2.0, people who are receiving the rewards have no reason to sell. No reason to sell either that they feel it's time to take profit, which everybody's investor understands. Time comes when you need to take profit. Fine, completely understand. But that's completely different from having to sell to cover overheads. Different scenario. That's what miners do right now. Miners have to sell to cover their overheads. Ethereum 2.0 stakers have no overheads. They just need to buy a Raspberry Pi. It's like $150. There's really minimal overheads. So with these two combined together, and with layer 2 driving up the amount of transactions happening on Ethereum, it's predicted that what is going to happen to the supply of Ethereum, it will be equivalent to what has happened to Bitcoin after 3 halvenings. So imagine Bitcoin from 2012, 3 halvenings ago, 2012 to 2021 in a year. Imagine that. It's insane supply shock. Obviously, these are all theses because, it hasn't happened. There's nothing to compare it with. When a Bitcoin halvening happens, you can compare it to previous halvening because it has happened before. But this has never happened before, something like this. Something like EIP 1559, something like a switch to Ethereum 2.0, something like this has never happened before. So it's hard to predict. You can run the numbers, you can simulate, it's hard to predict, but this is what we're looking at when we run the numbers. This is what expert analysts are looking at when they run the numbers. It looks pretty good if you ask me. Also, I want to add on why Ethereum, why not other layer 1 blockchains? Okay, so this is a very simple thing in my opinion. If you have participated in DeFi, if you have participated in yield farming, you would have seen that there's a lot of blockchains. Even right now, there's so many blockchains, it's so complicated. Sometimes you want to breach here, you want to breach there, it becomes very annoying. But if there's one thing you can notice, is that every blockchain that has traction is EVM compatible. The only other blockchain that can compete with Ethereum, that was able to compete with Ethereum at one point of time, was BSC. BSC, because it's EVM compatible. It's so easy for developers who are trained on Ethereum to build on BSC. And it's much cheaper, which is why BSC got a lot of traction. You look at Solana. Solana is relatively cheap, very well funded, pretty decent new system, but it's been a long time since everyone's been saying when is Sol season, when is Sol season. I won't be surprised to see it soon, but I don't think it will be on the magnitude of BSC and Ethereum. Why? Not because of users, but because of development talent. Or everybody who is an experienced or good developer, they're building on Ethereum. Everybody who has any sense of how finance works, or is good in sense of finance, it has a skill set in finance, is building on Ethereum. They're already all building on Ethereum. And it'll be easier for them to build on BSC than Sol. It'll be easier for them to build on Matic than Sol. Even you can look at FTM and Harmony. Okay, they were both initially non-EVM compatible, but they only started gaining a certain bit of traction when they released their EVM compatible site. When you can start connecting your MetaMask, when the devs can start using Solidity. That's when they gain traction. When SushiSwap for Harmony, it only recently gained traction when SushiSwap actually moved over. I mean, obviously, it still doesn't have the traction of other blockchains, but it gained a lot of traction when SushiSwap moved over. Because that is the network effect of Ethereum, in my opinion. And that kind of network effect is impossible to shake off. Or at least very, very, very tough to shake off. That's why I am increasingly bullish on Ether. And that's why this part is important, because every time someone asks me, how exposed am I to Ether? How many Ether do I have? My answer is always not enough. And I hope I've managed to tell you why it's never enough. Because it's just so many things are happening right now. All right, time